it's Jill Foster here with a special edition of PB&J video, as I am a guest on Darlene's blog and I wanted to share a video with you. Today I'll be using Penny Black's Poppy Trio, footnotes, and then also postcard to create a sort of vintage watercolor panel on my card. So here's a close look at that panel. And another look here at the watercolor we'll be doing. So to begin, I'm going to stamp this onto Canson 140-pound watercolor paper, and I'm using StazOn in the color of Spiced Chai. And I'm going to stamp this kind of off the edge and down in the corner of this piece. And I'm using StazOn ink because once that's completely dry, then it will be permanent and I can add lots of water and none of that ink is going to blend or bleed. So I'm going to do my watercoloring with distress markers, and I'm starting here with worn lipstick, and I'm just coloring that onto the petals of the flower towards the center of the flower. And for this watercolor, I'm going to be adding lots and lots of layers. So this is just kind of like a base layer that will kind of give the general reddish pink color to the flower. Now I'm going to take clean water and a watercolor brush, and I'm going to add water and blend that color so that it colors all of the petal except for the bits that sort of fold over. I want to save those for later and give them a different color. In between each color that I add, for the most part, I'll be drawing in between, but here I am going to add a little bit of Barn Door colored on my acrylic block, and I'm just dropping that into the already wet petal. So I'm just picking it up and dropping it in. It's really subtle, but what this does is when it dries, it kind of leaves the petal in that nice sort of edge to the petal, which is what I want. I don't want this to have a real smooth, blended look. I want it to look real watercolory and kind of old. So I dried that in between, and now I'm going in with fired brick to darken things up a bit and adding it towards the center of the petals, or where you see a petal that's underneath another petal. And then I'll go back and I will blend that with water. I'm starting by adding my water for the most part in the area where I did not put the fired brick color, and then working my way down into it. And by putting that layer of water in, the fired brick color can bleed out into the water, and the water does the blending and the movement of the color primarily. And then I'll follow that same process for the other flowers as well. Again, drawing in between so that with each layer you start getting different sort of watercolor edges for each color. Now I'm going in with spiced marmalade. I'm adding it on the edges of the flower, leaving the center part white so we'll have a little bit lighter color towards the center. And then I'll just blend that out using water in my brush. And I'm going to color here on my acrylic block, and I just wanted a light, very light bit of this color on the flower itself. So that's why I put it on the acrylic block first and then added it to the flower. Here I'm taking black soot for the center of the flowers, and I'm going to blend that with water. Kind of let it puddle. And it was a little bit darker than I wanted, so I'm just going to go in with a baby wipe and just pat that color. Pick up a little bit of it. And then just blend it a little bit more with a little more water. Next I'm going to color the leaves, and on the leaves I'm first putting down peeled paint. And then again, I'll blend that with water. I didn't spend a lot of time shading on the leaves just because I know I'm going to be adding a lot of inks to the background and most of that shading wouldn't show. I'm putting some peeled paint here on the stems. And then adding a touch of water to blend. And then this is pine needles. I added it on my acrylic block and I'm just dropping it in while that's just still a little bit wet, just to darken it up and add a little bit of variation of color. So now that that's dry, I'm ready to go in and do my background. So I'm taking a vintage photo marker and I'm going to color all the way around the flowers. And again, I'm not going to do a lot down around the stems of the flowers or the leaves, just because I know I'm going to be adding a lot of ink later on and it would sort of be a waste of time. It's not going to show very much. But mainly I wanted this up around the flowers, and you'll see here when I add water, it's going to bleed out towards the right-hand corner. So I'm going to put down quite a bit of water in the white area and then work up into the area that I colored. And that allows that ink to bleed out naturally from around those flowers. You can see I'm going back and adding quite a bit of water. I'm going to do that here on the inside. I'll have a little less water here just because it won't bleed as far just because of the stems and the leaves below. You can see you can go back, add a little bit more water, do the same process over here. And then I'm even going to kind of tilt this and let that drip and spread a little bit. Now I've dried this. I'm going to color here with Vintage Photo and also pick up a little bit on my water and splatter the paper. I dried that again, and now I'm ready to add some ink. I'm starting with Memento Peanut Brittle ink. I'm just sponging that over just to kind of add a little bit more of a golden tone to the area where it's watercolored in the background. Next I'll stamp the postcard stamp, and I'm inking it with Toffee Crunch. Now I'm going to use the footnote stamp, and I'm going to ink that with Memento Luxe Toffee Crunch. Oh, sorry for my head there. And I'm also going to add that up at the top as well. And then this is Gathered Twigs Distress Ink, which I'll add using the applicator tool and a foam pad around the edges. And then I'm also going to use some Faber-Castell Design Memory Craft Gesso. I'm going to just swipe it on with my finger. Some spots here a little bit in the center and then around the edges as well. Down in that corner on the edge. Just for even more variation in the color and distressing. So I love that with the gesso, sometimes you can give it a distressed look without having to go super dark. You can kind of keep it white, but it'll still look aged. I'm picking it up here with a baby wipe and also patting that on. So here's another look at that finished card. I thank you to Darlene for inviting me to be a guest on your blog. It is truly an honor. And I encourage all of you, if you enjoyed today's video, to subscribe to the Penny Black Ink channel, where you'll find lots of other PB&J videos that I've done. Here's a list of all the supplies used.